Another thing you can do for scarcity in the studio, it's not going to work on more established engineers, but if you're just starting off your music.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you don't know what I was going to say. Like cooking, everything has a recipe.
A set of instructions to follow in order to gain a certain result.
Music is no different.
Be it ingredients for a dish, a set list for an amazing show,
or a release strategy for a successful launch.
These are all recipes.
Hi, we're your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brandon.
Come and join us in our kitchen as we go through the Music Makers Cookbook.
Let's get cooking.
Welcome to the Music Makers Cookbook, the podcast that helps independent artists cook up recipes for success in the music industry. I say that faster and faster every single time.
I think you do.
I do. My name is Sean.
And I'm Brandon.
And today we're going to be continuing our series based on the book Influence by Robert Cialdini. We're coming to a close.
We are.
We only got like one or two left, honestly. Not too many. Hopefully you've been enjoying it. Let us know if you have. But before we dive into that, today's episode is going to be on the principle of scarcity. So going into talking to you, Brandon, have you ever bought something in your studio solely for the purpose of like it was scarce and you didn't know if you were going to get another chance at getting it?
Yes, I did. Actually, I'm looking at it right now. It's the precision bass on the wall. It's the Mark Hoppus edition. There was a listing on the Salvation Army auction website that had that same exact bass on there, and I was going to bid on it. And when we took like a closer inspection of the neck and the fretboard, we found that whoever owned that bass defretted it, or defretted. Yeah. It took out all the frets, but chipped it all along the fretboard. So whoever did it did a really terrible job. We were bidding on it originally, and I was like, wait, hold on a second. Like somebody pointed it out. I was like, whoa, this is a problem. And I was like, man, I really want one of those basses because they just sound so good. So I went on to Reverb and bought one right after that just because I wanted it. like there was no rush to get there. But like somehow that rush kind of translated from the listing itself, from the auction.
The rush from bidding to.
So that was like a little like time that scarcity had proved to work with me, even though I didn't even notice. And like, I think they had plenty of basses out there like that. Like
probably
plenty of Mark Hoppus editions out there, I'm sure. So it's not like it's super scarce, but they don't make it anymore, right? No. And very specific pickup in there. And I love the color on it and whatever. So I think that all that combined made me more emotionally charged to go buy it right away, right? What about you? Anything like that with your studio?
There's a couple of times where I picked up a couple of vintage mics from antique malls or antique shows, like just because it's like, I mean, when am I ever going to get the chance to get this again? Like I got this one large diaphragm disc mic. It sounds like a can mic from like 30s. It's like, when am I going to get the chance to get that again? And it was cheap. It was like $25. So
totally.
It was like, fuck it, it's my locker now. But I've never been in a bidding war or bid on anything, so I've never had that experience of like, oh, there's competition and it's only one of these, and like had that kind of energy going on. But I know there's a reason auctions exist.
Definitely, and you definitely pay more, for that experience sometimes. I mean, you'll maybe ultimately pay less than what the actual item is worth sometimes in these specific instances, but if you get caught up in the competition, you can quickly overspend.
It sounds like you're getting into the theory about like what scarcity actually is.
I just want to say too that I don't participate in the scarcity competition a lot with the studio, but we all get caught up in it sometimes.
Yeah. So what is scarcity, Brandon?
Scarcity is a concept that deals with having a limited supply of a resource, good, or a service.
I misheard you at first. They're going to like, scarcity is a construct, man.
It's all fake. It's all fake.
No, it is a concept.
Depending on how you look at life, everything's fake. So we'll get into that at maybe a different episode. But this could be like things like money, a good or a service item, or the ultimate scarce resource, time. Time you can never get back. You can never get more time. You can buy time maybe by being a little bit healthier, right? That's all theory, though. We don't know for sure how much time we actually get on this earth. So that is like the most scarce resource I think you could find.
Yeah, because in the moment, it's constantly being used. It's only 24 hours in the day. So,
exactly.
Yeah, once it's done, it's done.
Yep.
So you're completely right there. And as you mentioned, scarcity is the concept that like things are limited. So there's this whole kind of philosophy behind something called the scarcity mindset. We're not going to be diving into that in today's episode. That will be a future episode. But just for anyone who's maybe curious or thinking we're going to go in that direction, that's not. We're going more the physical uses of scarcity and how it can be used to influence people and how you can use it to influence like fans to like grow your fan base, get better gigs, things like that.
Great point, because we will definitely talk about the scarcity mindset at some point.
And the more we talk about what scarcity is as an actual principle, maybe you'll be able to kind of apply just based off how we talk, how it could be used in a mindset.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you mentioned, scarcity is the idea of a thing exists, it can go away, and now it no longer exists. There's a limited quantity of it, and once it's gone, it's gone.
Yep.
It's limited, it's scarce.
Yep.
Now, as Brandon wrote, in the book, Dr. Cialdini explains how it works to produce a click-run response, because people assign value to the things that they can't have more so than the things that they can have.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like the whole, like, the grass is greener on the other side.
Absolutely.
He goes into this whole specific example of new Coke and old Coke when like they tried to change the Coke recipe, how in focus testing, before they released new Coke, everyone who tasted it like 6% more favorable when they realized it wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
And they maybe thought that it was because, they're excited for a new product, when really it was like, we are looking at this favorably because we can't go out and buy it after this study. And then once they released new Coke and you couldn't get old Coke, a lot of people were like, what? Well, now I'm so favorable on old Coke. In fact, this one guy started this whole society about Coca-Cola for old Coke, even though in 2 blind taste tests, he actually preferred the new Coke.
Yeah.
He just thought of the old recipe better.
Yeah.
So it's, like when you can't have something, you assign more value of it and you look upon it more favorably because you can no longer achieve it. And your brain,
reminiscently sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. And he says about, like, in your brain, to justify the fact that you now want it more, your brain is like, well, it must be better because I want it. Even in reality, you only want it because you can't have it.
Yeah. I mean, what you bring up is a lot of perception-based value that we assign things that sometimes we can't have or we did have at one point. I like to bring up the example of a family heirloom, like watching like a show like those History Channel shows like Pawn Stars or American Pickers, something like that, where they go and buy these old items, right? And people have had these for a while. Some people say this is a very prominent family heirloom that we've had for a while. This is how much I think it's worth. And they often overvalue it because they have that emotional attachment to the item. Yes, that is probably worth more to you than it would be in the fair market value of anything, right? So the market also assigns value to these things. I mean, we go to the grocery store and we buy it based on the market, on the price that the market sets. Yeah. This all deals with economy-based stuff,
it
right?
kind of goes hand in hand with supply and demand and all that too. Like, because supply and demand is kind of scarcity. The less supply there is, the more scarce it is, the higher the price goes up.
Absolutely.
Anyways,
absolutely. So this deals with both behavioral economics and psychological economics, I guess, psychological factors. But I wanted to mention that really quick too, because the market does sometimes set a specific price for what people tend to value it as. I would say maybe it's more like an average sometimes of what people value these things at. Like I said before, though, scarcity can be very emotionally charged. The auction example I gave at the beginning, right? It was more emotionally charged by when I bought the base, right? At the time. And I definitely don't regret it, by the way, because you can get some buyer's remorse after you are emotionally charged to buy a scarce item and you overpay for that item, or you pay, too much for you. Yeah.
And we'll dive into that in the future, because if you're using scarcity and people leave it being happy that they didn't get it, that means that it's not being used in a positive way.
Absolutely.
Like, in fact, it could actually harm your brand or harm your career if you leave the people who don't get what you're doing happier than the people who do get what you're doing.
Yeah.
We'll dive into more of that towards the end of the section.
Great point. Very interesting juxtaposition. Did I use that right?
I don't know.
I've always wanted to use that word. I don't know if you even used it right. But this goes to show that Dr. Cialdini talks about, individuals that just like people in general, they tend to want to protect what they have instead of going out and gaining more, right? We're very afraid to lose what we have. And when those freedoms are sometimes taken away, that ends up in revolt, right? He mentions that in the book. So we're playing not to lose versus playing to win a lot of the time.
It's a stronger motivator for the human psyche to avoid loss than to...
Lots of risk mitigation. Exactly. So scarcity can definitely be a interesting motivator or demotivator depending on how you're using it and how it is kind of displayed in your certain situation, right?
Yeah. And also, like, scarcity, talking about the whole loss avoidance. This is a huge part as to why bad habits, I'm just real quick tangent, real quick break off. This is why certain bad habits or addictions can be really, really hard to break, because your brain isn't thinking like, I will gain health by stop eating fast food every day. It's more like, oh, well, I'll lose the comfort.
Yep.
Of
I'll lose
having
the
fast food every
taste.
day.
Yeah.
I'll lose the taste. I'll lose the dopamine that I get from this. And the same thing can happen to your music. It's like, oh, what do I gain from diving into music full time? I could, gain growth in my career, making it sustainable. But what do you lose? Well, you lose potentially the security you get from your 9 to 5.
You absolutely
Oh
lose
my
that.
God, yeah. But it's that whole like kind of risk reward thing.
Yep.
It's harder to look at the positives you might gain. Like what do I gain from releasing in this waterfall method or going through this promoter, or what do I gain from doing this and that versus doing it myself? What do I gain by having other people join in on my music versus what I lose? Like I lose the complete control, but I gain more different perspectives. Like a lot of times we are more reactive to what's lost.
Yeah. And like I think you're illustrating this is that sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And that's sometimes how we look at it too, right? It's an interesting dichotomy and very specific situations shape that. I'm sure a lot of childhood stuff shape that too, depending on how we view money and financials too, right? And especially where we're at in our daily lives, especially our careers. I mean, kind of like a side tangent on this is we both listened to the podcast, The 6-Figure Creative, but when they were branded the 6-Figure Home Studio, Brian and Chris, they used to say the golden handcuffs kept people at their day jobs, right? Because they were afraid to lose that comfortability, that security they had financially, instead of making the jump into a career that they've already proven successful in, right? And that's already with proven success. So this can happen at a multiple different scales depending on where you're at.
Yeah, like if you get to the point with your music career where, different people are reaching out to you to like you're getting opportunities to expand your tour, go to different cities, different labels are reaching out to you, or just all these opportunities are happening and you have to turn them down because you're like, then I lose my 9 to 5. Like I can't do it because I'm working this day. At that point, you got to think like, well, are these opportunities what's scarce, or is this like comfort scarce? Like I've already proven some success. People are showing interest in me. What do I end up doing? But yeah, that's all important about this. Not necessarily like really the main thing that is the focus of
we're not
today's
here to
episode.
decide that for you today, right?
Yeah.
That is definitely a personal choice for sure.
Yeah.
These are just some of the examples that we were kind of highlighting along the way.
Yeah. But it goes hand in hand with what scarcity is. It's like you lose something. And if you think that what I'd be losing is a limited thing, I can't get it back, then you're going to be really avoidant to losing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I mean takes us kind of to our next kind of topic on scarcity, is that kind of going back to maybe like the competition side of things. Is exactly that, the competition side of things. Scarcity makes the click run response way more heightened when you're competing against people. He uses the example of competing people when they go to like a used car lot or something like that. He'll invite this car salesman, hypothetically speaking. I'm sure it's a story. I think he highlighted it as a story. Invites 3 different people, the prospective buyers, right, to the lot at the same time. And he purposely like pits them against each other. It sounds really bad, but like it's just a very interesting way to spark competition for this specific car. He'll do very specific things, like he'll tell like 2 people to go wait on the side while he's showing the car off to the prospective buyer first, and the prospective buyer is kind of locked to a time sensitivity where he can't ask questions about it, right? It's either I buy it now or I have to walk away and give it up to the next person, right? So that emotional charge we get from the competition can heighten our click run response and make us do some really stupid things sometimes some really great things. Sometimes scarcity is a great way to get your ass off the couch, right? Like I got to do this now or something bad will happen, right?
Yep.
Instead of being like, I got to buy this now so someone else doesn't have this, right? There's way 2 different ways to look at this, 100%. But competition is definitely an emotionally charged like backing to scarcity.
For sure. And then to piggyback off of that, that we mentioned earlier, if the 2 people that don't get the car walk away and like a couple hours later, like, you know what, that was way too much money for that car. I'm glad I didn't buy that car. Then it's like, that's a dirty use of the tactic.
Absolutely.
Whereas if the one person walked away like, man, I really got a good deal on the car. Like, I'm really glad I jumped on this.
Yep.
Then, it's a win-win.
Yep. Absolutely.
Now, another example of scarcity that is showcased in the book that is used a lot in sales is in real estate, where it's a tactic that is used by some real estate officials where if you're interested in a house, they'll call you a couple days later saying, hey, I've got this other buyer who's really interested in the house.
Yep.
I've shown it to them once before. They want to come back tomorrow for it. They, are a surgeon looking about, like, got all the money. They're looking to just put a deposit down. They're going to take it from you. And that call, the whole purpose of this call by the realtor isn't necessarily because there's a real person who's really interested in that house. Maybe there is, but a lot of times it's a sales tactic to get you off the fence to becoming a willing participant of like, oh crap, I could lose this house. I'm like, maybe I want it, maybe I don't. I like it. I'm not so sure about it. To like, oh, I could lose it.
Yeah.
And that whole thing of like, well, now it's a limited commodity. Now it's not going to be here tomorrow if I don't act now. There's that time limit on it.
Yep.
And you're more likely to buy.
Yep, absolutely. And I think this what we're talking about now is very direct human to human competition means, right? I mean, we do this against ourselves though, right? Companies will put up something on sale for only a limited time, 5 days, 7 days, 3 days, 1 day, right? This time constraint gets us to buy quicker or ignore the questions that we had, the guidelines that we have about our own financial habits, right? That we have set up beforehand. Let's say a plugin goes on sale, for example, 24 hours only. It's only $30. Never seen it that low in price. I'm probably going to buy it if I've wanted it for that long, right?
Any sort of Guitar Center Independence Day sale or 4th of July sale.
Musician's stupid deal of the day. Musician's friend's stupid deal of the day.
That's a huge one, yeah.
Huge. You have 24 hours. Decide if you want it now or you're not going to get it for this price ever again.
And then sometimes they have the days where like for 9 hours, they post a new one every hour. That's even more of like, you've got an hour to buy this.
Yep,
and they also say of limited quantities. When it's sold out, it's sold out. So not only is there a time limit of it, if you do it now, you lose out on it. There's only a certain amount of them. So if I don't get it quickly, by the time I get to it, it might be too late.
Yep. Amazon stupid deals of the day. I think it's Amazon flash deals, lightning deals or something like that.
Lightning deals.
Yeah, they had that, both the time constraint and the quantity constraint. So now you have two things working against you. And just looking at the computer screen, nobody's telling you to buy this. There's no human on the other side. I mean, there is. They obviously have cultivated this sale on purpose to get you to buy, but there's no one telling you directly, you need to purchase this right now because somebody else is interested. You're making this whole game up in your head, right? And it's very interesting because like I sometimes will fall victim to this, but I've been better recently. How much take a step back, I'm good. We're chilling on this. But back in the day when I was buying a lot of plugins, though, I fell victim to this.
I get this bundle, get that bundle. I can do this. I can do that.
Exactly.
It's kind of the new age of like FOMO for hardware. Now it's FOMO for software. It's like, oh man, this engineer uses this to get this really sick sound. So I'm gonna get this plugin and I'm gonna sound just like this song.
Yep.
It's like, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm gonna buy Pro Tools just because fill in the blank uses it. Like, it's just a tool at the end of the day, right? Yeah. So it's just interesting, like the different ways that you can kind of use competition, either directly or indirectly, to kind of like beef up your scarcity tactics. Yeah. Have you ever used a scarcity tactic when you've sold stuff?
When I've sold stuff?
Either like on purpose or just by accident.
I probably use it on accident all the time. Yeah. There's days where like people, for my studio, when clients reach out like, hey, I really want to come in this month and knock the song out. What do you have available? It's like, well, I've only got these 2 days available. And then, and there are only 2 days I got available. So, they might be gone by the end of the week.
Yep.
And it's an honest thing of like, I've only got these 2 days available. Yeah. If you want it done this month, these are the only 2 days I got.
Well, because like if somebody doesn't book with you, you're going to fill that time anyways. Yeah. So either way, that time's going to be filled. So do you want it now?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Or do you want to wait?
Yeah.
It's all up to you. I've used it definitely on like Facebook Marketplace by accident. Like, oh yeah, I have a couple people interested in this card. Like I was selling Pokemon cards last year. You know the journey. I was selling Pokemon cards last year. People were like, "Oh, do you still have it?" Whatever. And we're not bots, by the way, because I get that message. I got those messages a lot. And I'd be like, "Yeah, somebody else is interested." And they'd be like, "Oh, I'll take it," or whatever. Like, "I'll come meet you right now," right? So there was that like little aspect in there. I did try to use it intentionally at a couple points just to see because I was kind of experimenting, right?
Yeah.
But it was never like deliberately, and I wasn't like, "Well, if you pay me $10 more, then you can have it." Like I'm not setting up a bid like that or anything, but was just kind of curious to see how it was going to work. And it did to a certain extent, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of that, how you've used it and how I've used it, how can independent artists use scarcity to help further their career? We've got a couple examples. We're going to be talking about kind of 4 sections, 4 different categories. The first one being live. The second one being like digital, social media, online, like how you release it, whatever. 3 is like in the studio. You can use scarcity in the studio. And then 4 is in like merch and sales and like how you sell stuff online and in the live setting. So that's going to be like the big kind of like merchandise aspect of of using the scarcity, which is one of the most easy to understand ways of talking about scarcity.
It is.
Because it's a physical item that is
Yes.
there or it's not.
Less abstract, more tangible.
Yes.
Mhm.
So let's talk about how artists can use scarcity in a live performance setting.
Mhm.
So the first off is if you are doing ticket sales before the show, you can use the scarcity limit, and it's actually kind of baked in because most venues have a capacity limitation.
Mhm.
If you publicize this on your ticket sales, that uses the law of scarcity in promoting the tickets of that event. If you have like a counter saying, here's 100 tickets available, 53 out of 100 sold. Now someone sees it and you're like, oh crap, half of them are gone. If I don't
Yeah.
buy my ticket now, I might not be able to go there.
Mhm.
Or if you have, let's say you're doing a tour with another band or whatnot, and you have a one-time, like a third band coming in for the ticket on one leg of the tour, you can say, hey, this is the only show we're doing with this band. Make sure you're at this show.
Mhm.
Someone's like, there's a scarcity there. If they miss that show, they're never going to see those three bands in one showcase. Once again, we'll dive more into it later, but like if you have limited time merchandise at the show, like, hey, come to the show.
Yep.
We're never going to sell this again, just at the venue.
Yep.
But more things can apply to it if you're able to work out a deal with the bar. It's like, hey, come to the show.
Yeah.
You get, half off drinks if you're at the show, or you get this wristband for the band or whatnot. Or there's plenty of ways you can use it. But the big thing that we really wanted to cover is the whole ticket sales aspect of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like you said too, like you did briefly touch on the merch thing, like where you can make a shirt that's specifically for that city, or touring shirts are like one of the best examples because it's only available at the venue, right? Or on the tour that they're on, right? You can't buy it online typically. And that's a way to use scarcity to encourage people to come up to the merch booth, to come spend some money while they're there, right? And everybody loves a good tour shirt. Everybody loves their hometown or their satellite hometown, right?
Yep.
So why not use that to your advantage and maybe make a couple extra bucks doing so, right?
sure.
Because it is a valid way to do it, and it is emotionally connected to the person that is buying it. It is not a malicious way to do it.
No.
I think it's actually a pretty smart way to do it.
Yeah.
I buy tour shirts.
Yeah.
By the way.
Me too.
All the time.
Yeah.
When I can, when I'm at a show, because they're fucking cool, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Not at
What were you
all.
about to say?
I was going to say a continuation of that is one of the easiest ways for an independent artist to use scarcity at a live setting is to use it for experiences.
Yeah.
Because you only have a certain amount of time and the fans are there to see you. If you can offer them experiences that engage with you where you can only see so many people because you only have so much time, then that's an offering you can do that once again peaks into scarcity. If there's only so many people can do this, only so much time for this to happen. So let's say doors open 20 minutes before the show, you can do a Q&A with the band, but only like the first 15 people are let in. Well, now people are not only going to want to come to the show, but they're going to want to come early.
Yeah.
That causes maybe a line to show up in front of the venue.
Yep.
So maybe other people are interested. I mean, I don't know. Have you ever been in a line before going to a live show? I've been at a couple
yes,
times.
I have.
Yeah,
Yes,
I've been
I
at
have.
a couple times
Yep.
at the Arc, and I've had people walking by asking people, and it's like, hey, who's the show? What's this
Yeah.
artist?
Yep.
Now you're having the whole, now you have social proof on your side in front of the venue, getting people who may not have been interested being like, oh, why are people here for this?
Yeah.
So you can use scarcity to promote other aspects that make your event look more desirable. Or if you have, signings, like, hey, if you come here, if you pay 50 extra bucks, 20 people will have a meet and greet before or after the show, and I'll give you a piece of merch and I'll sign it. That signature is what's the limited thing. That time is the limited thing.
Yeah.
I went and saw Justin Furstenfeld at Blue October.
Oh,
he
nice.
did a series called the Open Book Tour where he was just him, just acoustic, not his full band, but he played all of the songs and he talked about the stories for each song before he performed it, and went from his childhood all the way to current time of seeing him, and talked about the story of why each song was created, and went really deep and really emotional. And it was a phenomenal concert. But before the concert, he did a 30-minute mini concert to VIPs.
That's awesome.
30-minute mini concert, and then a 20-minute meet and greet, and then the doors open for the main show.
Yep.
It was one of the coolest experiences because I love the band, I love the artist, I love the music, and it's already just him performing. It's already crazy intimate and super cool. So if you're the headliner of a band and like you write all your own songs and you're a singer-songwriter and people really attach themselves to the lyrics, even if you have a full band with a full show, if it's your show, you can easily say, buy VIP tickets, doors open 50 minutes early for you. I'll be doing an acoustic set of all my old songs and just kind of chilling with the audience. And then the real show, the doors open and the full band comes out.
Yep.
That's incredibly engaging. And
Absolutely.
super limited.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have like 3 or 4 things to add to that because I've been a part of those experiences too, where I've ran the experience, right? Like meet and greets beforehand with shows when I was working for the radio station. That was always the most common occurrence. It was always before the show. It was like it was fairly early. It was definitely still during like initial sound check. So it wasn't like people were already at the venue, but it was early enough for like 15, 20 people to be standing outside out to go get them, right?
Yeah.
And then go do the meet and greet. Yellow Wolf, I remember he was here in town. And we did a pre-show show where people showed up early enough they could see him perform acoustically on like the bar side of the Fillmore. That was awesome. It was super cool, super like intimate experience that they got to see, like the people that showed up early, you know, and with tickets, obviously, because they had to be going to the show. But just what a cool experience that was. And then that the stuff you can cultivate from that with people posting about it and things like that, and then you interacting with fans is just massive, right?
And they're never going to forget about it.
Exactly. Now this is a more maybe solidified band kind of thing. You've been on tour, you're doing this for a while, you're making some good money doing this. A Date I Remember came to town when they were on one of their tours, and they did a totally private acoustic show. It was like the first 250 people that showed up and got into the door were able to go in there and watch them play for free. It was while they were in Detroit, and I went to that show. That's the one I stood outside for. It was fucking cold, man.
Dang.
Super cold. We waited outside for maybe 2 hours, right? But we had people asking, who's the band? Like, what are you guys waiting for? What's going on here? It was also put on by 89X2, which was my future employer, so that was wild. My fiance was also there, and I didn't know her at the time, so that was wild. So it was a big show. Big show experience. A lot of foreshadowing at that show, which was really weird. And it was my favorite band at the time, so it was really cool. I was with all my friends. And but the point is like, being able to like, what was I going to say? Oh, using like that capacity number, 250, right? It was massive because people had to show up there super, super early.
They're worried of missing out.
Exactly.
They were worried that, if I don't get here 2 hours beforehand, I might be number 251 and then I can't get in.
Exactly. Now, luckily, they let like maybe 350 come in because they were really nice. But then I think they started turning people away. So that was like legitimate.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
There was a cutoff somewhere.
Yeah.
But it was just 250 to get people there early, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a good way to use scarcity as like a little bit of a tactic, maybe undercutting what you can actually do too.
For sure.
Whatever way you can encourage and foster people to come and engage at a live show, probably the better, honestly.
Oh yeah, experiences are a great way to utilize scarcity as a tactic to build interest for it.
Absolutely.
Moving on from live, we're going to dive into kind of like digital, social media, online, song release, whatever it may be. Couple examples that we have of ways you can use scarcity is if you have an album release date.
Yep.
You can potentially sell pre-orders, I guess, for the album. Yeah, you can sell like pre-order tickets for the album where if you're one of the first 50 people to buy it, you get a code emailed to you that includes a link to a Discord where you do a live album viewing party where you can talk to your fans, answer questions about the songs after each song, and really just engage in more personal experience. It's digital, but it's still an experience that you can use as an artist to grow your career and build interest and get people really having fun with it.
And I think the music industry notices this more now, so especially with Spotify, right? Because you can pre-save on Spotify, and those pre-saves and the interaction that Spotify has been doing recently, especially with. Have you ever gotten an email from one of the artists you follow on there that's like, so and so thanks you for being a fan, and then there's something you haven't gotten.
I'm not getting one of those.
Okay, so like I follow like maybe like let's take Gunna for example. It was like Gunna thanks you for being a fan, and then there would be something special in there that's like an email sent to you. It's like a little exclusive thing that has been put on by Spotify. Sometimes it's like a thank you. Sometimes it's like an article or whatever. You know, maybe like a merch link or something. You know, but it's still like exclusive, right? And there's still that factor of scarcity where you have to follow Gunna, you know, and like.
Well, I know in 2023 the Spotify Wrapped they had this thing where they would send videos. The artists that participated, they would show you video clips of the artist thanking you as an audience for being one of their top listeners. Now you would only get a video from an artist that you were a huge fan of. So one, they already know you like the person. Two, you're only getting the video if you're one of the top listeners. Yeah. And I know that there were fans sharing like, hey, I got this video from this artist. Hey, I got this video from this artist. One, it's like, oh, that's so cool. It's, you know, hear that. But also now they're sharing the music they enjoy with other people. It's a conversation thing to do. But it's like they only got it. And like someone else was like, oh man, I really wish I got something from my artist or whatever. Like I didn't get that video even though I really like that artist. Yeah. Maybe they're going to listen more next year. But like, you know, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I think now Spotify is taking this. I'm not hailing Spotify for its ingenuity or ingenuity because like Definitely some issues with Spotify for sure. But I'm just saying, like, they're probably the most prominent with doing this, I would say, so far. Like I said, Spotify is going to be a social media platform in the next 5 years. You can quote me on that. I don't care, because it will be. Just saying. But being able to pre-save that and maybe like being able to give, like, I don't know, like the pre-save is the buy-in, right?
Yes.
And then you get something exclusive from them, from the artist that you're saving from, right? That is cool, because like, but that's the thing though, it has to be unique sometimes, right? So you have to do like maybe 7, 8 different iterations of whatever, so you can get a specific email sent to that person. So that person go to their friend and be like, hey, I got this email. What does your email look like? Right. And like, oh, I got this one. So it's like kind of like a little collector thing, but there has to be some form of scarcity there. Otherwise, if you're just sending generic videos,
we could have like, let's say you have like different custom wallpapers.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a fun one.
Exactly.
Email like different, like 3 different images to different fans. Like, oh, I got to share the image. Now, obviously, of course, eventually it'll pop up online and anyone can download it. But for the time being, it's kind of, you know, it's cool.
Yeah.
Treat it like Pokemon cards. Just call back to that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I remember, like, I think Avenged Sevenfold did this at one point where they, I can't remember exactly, but there was like some exclusive stuff that you might get, like when you buy an album or pre-order an album, right? And you don't know which one you're going to get.
It's getting more into merch.
It is. So, but still, like, it still like illustrates the point. Like, there has to be something that is worth value on the back end of it.
Yeah.
And doing this digitally is way harder. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Because there aren't
digital value.
Yeah, because digitally all it takes is one click to do something. Then that means you have to make a lot of fucking like custom videos to people that might not otherwise appreciate it sometimes, right?
Well,
so there has to be a disqualifier sometimes when you do this, right? So the digital online one is really tough, and that's why I was bringing up Spotify, because I think they've been doing it okay so far.
Yes and no. For song releases, to build emphasis on inside of that, using Scarcity to promote a song release, because digital doesn't have a limit.
Right.
I agree. It can be hard. So the scarcity has to be something that goes along with it, not necessarily the thing that they get.
Yeah.
Now, social media, you can really use the scarcity principle to motivate your fan base to do action and like create things for you and whatnot to build momentum. One way you can do it is by a basic, like, contests. Contests are huge to get people interested and excited about it. So like, let's say you reach out to your followers and you say, hey, I'm putting together a music video that's only going to be released, like it's going to be releasing on these social platforms that I really want fan engagement for. So when this song releases, you can do it to a pre-release for a song. So tie it in for a pre-release. So like, follow the song so you get notified once you get releases, because the first 100 people who send videos of them lip singing to the song are going to be edited into this music video for this new single. Boom. Yeah. Only 100 people. That's amount are limited. The time is limited because only the first 100. Not only is there an actual amount, but you have to go quick. And 2 and 3, it says like pre-order and save the song so you get notified right when it drops, so you can create a lip singing video as soon as it drops. So if you've got like a large active fan base, that's a way to really create that fan engagement and whatnot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. On that subject, there definitely has to be some sort of disqualifier too. Like, I would say too, because like when I was working at the radio station, we were instructed to pose more with the younger demographic, right? To attract more young listeners to the station, make it look a little bit more lively. So there were like disqualifiers that we had to kind of like pick out at some point, right?
You're old.
Yeah.
Get away.
Yeah. It was like, and it was,
Okay, boomer.
dude, it was like tough sometimes, because we'd go to like some bars and it'd be like, there's nobody here my age. And I was 19 at the time. So like, I was like,
why would they be at a bar?
That's what I'm saying. There's nobody here my age. So like, what am I supposed to do with this? Right. So like, when you do these things and you do have a large fan base, like Sean just said, like that specific thing, if you get 200 entries, like you can sift through the entries and pick your favorite that will match best with the video. Still maintain that brand awareness on the back end of things. But that scarcity though will get you those entries to be able to do that, right? That number associated with it is really, really important.
And once again, like, the way you're using scarcity in these kind of examples is in the minds of your fans. If they like your music and they want to be seen by you and engage with you, what they're going to be thinking is, if I'm not one of these first 100 people, they're not going to see my submission.
Exactly.
So I need to create it, and I need to create it fast. So I need to listen to the song, and I need to learn the lyrics, and I need to really engage in it right off the bat. Now, once again, you get a bunch of people to listen to it. That's social proof. That builds it up online. Now the song is really popular. It gets put in other playlists. Like it all adds up. And algorithms love engagement, love that kind of shit.
Yes, they
so the more you can do it, like it just all adds up.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Next one. my favorite
Yeah.
maybe of the list,
Go
because
for it.
I live in the studio. Is a studio. How do we use scarcity in the studio? I have a good one. Can I go first?
Is it for how you use scarcity or how artists can use scarcity?
That's for how artists use scarcity.
Killer.
Yeah.
All right.
Tell your engineer what the deadline is.
Fucking please.
Please, dude. Like that's deadlines are one of the best ways to illustrate scarcity.
And say the deadline that not just like, hey, I need this by the 10th.
Right.
That's
Or tomorrow.
Super vague.
Right.
Say, hey, I need this by the 10th because I'm releasing it on the 24th.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, if you're actually planning on releasing it on the 10th and you just say, hey, the deadline's the 10th, they might get it to you on the 9th or the 10th. And then you're screwed. Yep. So not only give them the deadline that you need the song by, give them the deadline that the thing's going to be released by. So they also know like, yeah, I need this because of this greater reason.
Absolutely.
And then you're not screwed on the back end.
Yeah, 100%. And we've talked about deadlines before, haven't we, Sean?
We have a whole episode on deadlines. Keep talking while I look it up.
I was just going to sit here and stare at you while you looked it up. Deadlines are super important to tell your producer, your engineer, your studio personnel, whoever is working on the project with you. So everybody's on the same page and there is a sense of urgency to work on your stuff. Things slip through the cracks. They really do. And if they're a good engineer, a good producer, they will have some kind of task manager that they will be able to put your deadline into, right? And see that, oh, this is coming up soon. I need to work on this, right? I need to get this back. And like they should have some sort of hierarchy built where it's like, oh, I know there will be revisions, so I need to make sure I get it to them by this date. And all of a sudden, the 10th becomes the 4th for them because they're like, I want to build in 3 days of revisions, right? Just in case. And I know I can get these revisions back quickly. And then we collaborate and then we finish on the final product. And all of a sudden, you're getting the song by the 10th, right? So how do you set deadlines? It's in that episode, like Sean's saying.
Yep. It's in episode 29 of our podcast.
Because we talk about soft and hard deadlines. We're talking about kind of both right now. Mm-hmm. Your hard deadline sometimes should be like a secret. And like your soft deadline maybe should be like the one that's like portrayed. So that way you get it by the time you need, like Sean just said. Because otherwise you might be screwed.
To put it bluntly. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, you might be screwed.
But you can also use it as not only set up deadlines with the engineer inside the studio, you can also set up deadlines with any session musicians that are there.
Yep.
It's like, hey, I'm paying for 4 hours of studio time. We really need to get your part done in too, because that's the keyboardist is coming at that point. So when we get in there, like we got to go hit the ground running. Mm-hmm. We can't dilly dally on this. We really need to. I love that phrase, by the way, dilly dally. It's just fun to say. It's just fun to say.
It's good.
But yeah, we setting the deadline of we only have this much time to record it. And I mean, if you really want to be harsh, you can say like, hey, if you can't knock it out on this deadline, then I'm going to have the guitar player play your bass line.
Yep.
So if you don't play in this time, you're not on the album.
Yeah. I love how you went after the bassist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. From examples. But anyways.
I love it. No, I love it.
So yeah, kind of saying that like if you don't get it done by this time frame, or if you don't think you can get it done by this time frame, then we might have to program the drums. We might have to do this. So it also is you might not be on the album if you don't do this. It's a little harsh, but honestly, if you're really on a budget and you only have a certain amount of time and you can't, fuck around.
Yep.
You might have to do it.
Yeah, I love how you bring up budget because we didn't even mention the term budget constraint. That's a massive scarcity concept right there alone. I mean, you only have so much money you can spend on something that you allocated towards this. At least you should. I mean, if you're rolling in the dough, I mean, fuck it, whatever. But that definitely demonstrates that's important. Is being able to budget that out and know like, okay, this time equals this amount of money, and we need to do it within this amount of time, like an hour, right? The keyboardist gets an hour. That's it. Move on, right? That also demonstrates another really quick thing is that the artist and the engineer or the producer, whoever you want to say, they can both use scarcity together within the session to make sure that things are being done efficiently, right?
Yeah.
You can spend a lot of time just trying to like come up with parts on the keys, come up with parts on the guitar, but is that time being well used within that amount of time of the session, right?
Is this a recording session or is this a composition session? Is this a songwriting session? Like what exactly are we going for here?
Exactly. And that can go on both ends, right? That can be the artist telling the producer, hey, we've spent too much time on trying to cultivate the perfect snare. We need to move on so we can get this recorded because I only have this amount of time set.
Yep.
Or vice versa. We can keep trying to like play through guitar parts and figure stuff out, artists, but we need to record the basis of the song, not the bassist, But I mean, maybe the basis, but the
Maybe.
basis of the song, so we can build on top of this. Otherwise, we're just going to be staring at a blank session the entire day. So that can go both ways, and I think it's a very effective use of time in the studio, and can definitely set some very good scarcity time constraints on what you do.
Now, this is another thing you can do for scarcity in the studio. It's not going to work on more established engineers, but if you're just starting off your music,
Absolutely, yeah.
And you don't know what I was going to say.
Oh, I thought you meant as a whole.
No, the example.
Well, I mean, as a whole too, because I can guarantee you, like some of the more weathered gentlemen or gentlewomen in the industry, they probably have some sort of a set schedule, anyways.
Yeah.
You know, so like they're probably not going to jerk around or anything.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I was going to say a specific example that you can do if you're just starting off and you want to get a song mixed, master, recorded by like a local guy who's just starting off but has more knowledge or gear than you necessarily have. Something you can do is you can try to shop around your music, send demos to these other artists, be like, hey, you know, I'm looking to work with you. This is my budget. Can you do it? I've also got 2 other engineers interested in this. Or you can shoot out like, hey, I'm looking to get an album done. Would you be willing to submit a 30-second mixing sample of what you do with this song? I've got other engineers who have sent stuff in. I'm going to be comparing them on the end of the week or whatever. Now, for an established studio, they're probably not going to participate unless you are that big of a band.
Yeah, most likely not. Yeah.
Because there are times like really big bands, like that's how Warren Hewart of Produce Like a Pro worked with Aerosmith, was he participated in a mixing competition for Aerosmith, this album, and he won it. So when you're big, you can do that with huge studios. Yeah. But when you're just starting off, you're going to have to kind of also do it with engineers who are just starting off. But that way you can potentially hear your music through the lens of 3, 4, 5 different engineers, see what it would sound like starting off, and be like, okay, well, this person can do it for this budget, this person can't do it for this budget. So I'm gonna say like, hey, I've got these two people offering to do it for $20 an hour. Could you do $20? Could you do $25 an hour? I know you said we were 40, but we really like your thing. If not, walk away. Yep. And be like, and then maybe they'll come back to you, maybe they won't, but just however it ends up working. But that whole scarcity of, I have an album project, it's this big, it's this much time, it's going to be this much of an income for whoever you're working with, especially when they're just starting off. That's the scarcity that you're kind of leveraging on your side.
Absolutely. Great point.
Yeah.
Great point.
And they're like, oh, if I don't do a 30-second example of my mix, then I might not win this. And I lose on this project as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Sean said, that 30 seconds of audio can take a long time to do, by the way.
Yes.
So so don't be surprised if somebody says no, just in case. That is more common maybe with mastering. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say mastering samples are more frequent.
Yeah. Mixing samples are tough.
I get hit up every now and then. Have you gotten hit up by people for mixing samples?
I don't do mixing samples. I don't even offer that.
No, I don't either. I've had people ask me, and when I first started, I did them, and they were fun, and I learned a lot from it. Yeah. But nowadays, now that I'm more established,
I have done it before. Yeah. Way long time ago though.
Yeah. It's like, unless I really like their music.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not.
It's
worth
more
it
of a point to the portfolio. You know, like, here's what the general idea would be. You know, here's what I can do if you like the sound.
Pretty much.
Then go ahead. Like, whenever anybody, just a little insight to my side of the studio thing is, whenever anybody hits me up for an inquiry, whether that's through somebody I know or it's on my website or whatever, my first thing I send them back is like the follow-up email to the inquiry. I ask a bunch of questions, you know, and then I say at the end, make sure to listen to my portfolio if you haven't already, because I want to make sure that I'm the right fit for you, right? And if they genuinely like it, then that is like, that's pretty good, right? Like, but I'm just very like transparent, like, hey, this is my sound, or this is kind of like the styles I like going for. Yeah,
this is what you can expect coming in.
Exactly. Make sure that this fits for you. So like a little bit of a disqualifier there, you know, that I try to put out there, even if it's subtle, right? So yeah, a little back end into the studio. Didn't expect to talk about that today, but yeah. But we typically don't. Sean says he does sometimes. We typically don't do mixing samples because time is scarce on our end. That is the way that we use scarcity. We say that we can't offer this as a service or as a nicety, right, to potential leads, right?
Because that 30 seconds of audio can take 2, 3, 4, 5 hours if you're including set up a session, balance the levels, run it through hardware. If you're using hardware like I do, everything gets rendered in real time.
I mean, let's be honest, you're basically mixing the song at that point for free, right? And that's cool. And you might leave out some specific automation stuff you do, or like the really fancy stuff on the back end. But like the meat and potatoes, it's there. So like you're spending a few hours doing that, and there might not be a benefit to it at the end, I should say.
Yeah. For some of the engineers that are more established. That's why I said it doesn't
Absolutely.
really work on more established studios.
No, great point.
Unless they're that big.
Yep, great point.
Otherwise,
Yep. I'm just a studio nerd so I'll just like talk about this shit all day. So, but,
I mean, like if I had just graduated Schoolcraft and a band was like, yeah, we did this live show that we had the stems for, just vocal, backing vocal, guitar, bass, and drums, and we want to get it mixed for like a live thing for our band camp. And then if we like your work, we'd love to book some studio time, but we're shopping around to different engineers. I'm just starting. I'm looking for anybody.
No, same. Been there, done that.
And I'm learning. I'm like, I get to apply all this, get to try these new things. I want to figure this out and do that out. Like, I'm 1,000%
been there,
down.
done that.
Yeah. So that's how you can kind of use that.
Absolutely.
That's my last studio example for Scarcity. Do you have any more studio examples?
No, I can't think of anything else.
All right. Now the big one, merch.
Ooh.
Merchandise and sales.
Merchandising.
Mm-hmm. Limited items. That's it. That's all I got to say.
That's it. That was the Makers Cookbook podcast. No, I'm just playing.
Thank you for listening to us. Who's been to a concert where you go up after the concert to buy a shirt and like, hey, what's your size? Oh, I'm a medium. We just ran out of mediums.
Yeah, it's crazy. You can't be going up at the end of the show. You're wild if you're doing that in the first place.
But if you've never done that.
this point stands.
No, you're right. But if you've ever done it, how much more did you want the shirt?
Right.
Maybe you're like, oh, well, I guess I can do a large. Like, you wouldn't do that before, but like, oh, maybe I'll get a beanie or update to a sweater.
Totally.
I just wanted a t-shirt, but okay, let me get a sweater because you lost out on it. Having limited quantities of merchandise, as we talked about earlier, you can have it so you only sell this at live shows. You've only got 1,000 of these in limited stock for this time only. This is a huge thing that a lot of people do online now, a lot of bands, a lot of influencers, a lot of YouTubers, TikTokers, whatever. It's the concept of the drop.
Yep.
We have these products for this period of time up to this quantity. When they sell out, they're gone. When this week is done, it's gone. Yep.
Kanye with the Easy brand.
Yep.
The limited time drops. I mean, maybe not a great example in this day and age, but maybe take like Nike with like Forces or something when they drop them, or whatever. Limited time run, right? Like, got to get it now.
Yeah.
Or got to enter into the raffle at least so they can potentially get it, right? Yeah. Because it's not going to be available at some point. And then you're going to have to buy it on the back end market, and it gets really expensive.
Oh, it does, yeah. Because like when they can no longer get it, the value of it just skyrockets. The whole supply and demand thing. That's why Taylor Swift tickets got so fucking expensive.
Yes, they
after
did.
They sold out. Yep. It's a huge thing. You can only get these wristbands in these legs of the tour. You can only get this shirt for this month after the single just drops. Whatever it may be, if you're creating an item, one, it's going to be limited to begin with, because especially if you're fronting the cost up front, unless you're using a service like Redbubble or whatnot, where it's print on demand, you're buying up front. There's only so much of it. Why not use that to your advantage when trying to sell it? You could have a counter on your website saying 50% sold or 80% sold, and that's going to make people want to get it more.
Absolutely.
If you're at a live show that you're selling merch at, like let's say you're doing more of an experience-based sale to merch. This goes back into live. But even if it's like, buy this wristband or hat or whatever, and that's what allows you access to seeing the band afterwards. Now it's limited merch and it's limited an activity, an event with the band. So that doubles up on it.
Yeah. And not only that, I mean, this kind of goes back to the ticket sales kind of thing, and we'll pretty much be talking general admission a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But let's say you are in like some kind of stadium or some kind of like bigger venue that allows you to go through Ticketmaster and pick a seat. Yeah. That seating chart is there for the nicety of people to pick their seats, but it's also there to encourage people to buy because they can see how many gray dots there are across the entire damn stadium. And you are timed on the checkout. So you have to put your card information in there by 5 minutes. Like that's the expiration, or you will give up those seats, right? That too.
Yeah, that feature too.
And then you can actually watch in real time the dots disappear on the map, right? And
dude, if that ain't building scarcity, if that ain't being like, oh shit, I might miss out on this, I gotta go now.
That is the ultimate. Ticketmaster knows what they're doing. They're also Monopoly. We'll get into that later, but it is absolutely wild what that can do and how much people spend on tickets, dude. Very underrated. And like I said, we'll probably be dealing with general admission like most of the time on this podcast. But if you have a situation like that and an opportunity like that, step back and maybe watch or something.
That shit works. It works for a reason.
It works. Or next time you're going to buy concert tickets, just be cognizant of it and conscious and be like, oh my God, like I'm getting triggered by this right now, right? It's actually incredible. It's incredible.
Another thing I've seen bands do that kind of uses a scarcity principle, but isn't necessarily merch or tickets or anything like that. There's a local band that I think they're Ohio based. I don't remember exactly, but they played around here occasionally. And what they do is throughout their performance on stage, they have a part of the band, member of the band or someone who goes with the band who is a painter. And they will paint an acrylic painting while the band's performing. And then after the show is done, they do an auction of that painting. So one, it's a unique experience. You get to take it home with you. And now you've got the whole bidding thing where if someone else bids more, you're going to lose out. And that can cause the number to go up and up and up. Yeah. So if you have some sort of unique thing that you do on stage or a performance arts aspect of it that you can also leverage to make the scarcity, because there's only that one painting that was made at that one show and it'll never be made or never be sold again. It's a limited thing.
Yep.
So that's the scarcity of that too.
Yeah.
It just compounds and compounds and compounds. So you can get really creative with this. You can
really
get
creative.
really creative.
Yeah. I mean, and even like some of the merch that you get, like if you get Champion merch instead of Gildan merch, right? You can sell 50 runs of the Champion merch and people are typically more willing to pay a little bit more for better quality things. You can get really creative with your merchandising on this. Very creative. And it's available to you at your fingertips these days. So definitely experiment around. Definitely experiment around.
Also digging back into what you were saying earlier of if you sell a vinyl, it's like, hey, 1 in every 10 is a green vinyl instead of a black vinyl. Now you're adding variants.
Exactly.
So people are more and like, what am I going to get? There's
vinyl runs are a great example actually because there's only so many that bands typically get pressed these days, right? And those are usually limited edition runs for the most part, unless you're like big name Taylor Swift, like Jay-Z, whoever, right? You're probably only getting like 250 vinyls pressed at one time, right? It's expensive to do. There's a lot of quality control that goes on in the back end, i.e. it's also expensive to do. So getting that limited run, right, of like, oh, we only have 250. I mean, and if you're a vinyl collector and that's your favorite band, you're running to that checkout as fast as you can to pick that up before they're gone forever, especially if it's a cool looking vinyl, you know, like where it's like purple translucent or something cool, you know, that'll look really good on your shelf, right? It's just a great way to kind of demonstrate the merchandising of vinyl, right? That has a major scarcity factor to it most of the time. Most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole like variance thing, like with that, and you can do variance with anything you do. I've seen some like local punk bands be like 1 in every 50 shirts, we like bleach it.
Yeah,
the band shirt. So maybe get a custom bleached shirt, or maybe 1 in every 50 of this CD is signed by the band.
Yeah.
Now there's more like limited aspect of it, and you can just get creative, get intense. It really. Do what you want.
Yeah.
Use scarcity.
Great way to put it.
That's it. I'm out. I'm out for merch and sales. If you want to continue, go for it.
I think I've said my piece on that.
Fantastic. All right.
We got to give ourselves some time constraint because otherwise we'll just keep talking.
Yes.
So time is scarce.
It is.
See how we related that back?
Woo. What goes around comes around.
There you go.
All right. Well, now to close out this episode, now we've talked about how you could use scarcity. Let's kind of talk about kind of some warnings. Don't overuse it.
Yeah.
Because it can actually lead to people have a sour taste in their mouth. One, if you, this is hard to apply to music, but if you have some like a Patreon or whatnot for your band and you have all these perks that you give, be cautious that once you give somebody something, once you take it away, they're going to look more favorably upon it because they can no longer get it.
Right.
So like, let's say when you're an independent artist, you have a Patreon and when they sign up for it, they get demos, like rough demos or just acoustic things from your phone as you create songs. So you get access to your songs throughout the creation process. That's pretty cool. That's pretty dope. You sign to a label, all of a sudden you can't do that anymore. They restrict your ability to release songs for that kind of platform. You take it away.
Yeah.
They might not be happy about it.
Yeah.
Because this thing
point.
that they got and they got used to is now gone.
Yeah.
So that's how scarcity can potentially work against you.
Yeah. Dr. Cialdini in the book mentions Procter & Gamble doing this is they stopped sending out coupons for their stuff that was regularly priced. And instead, they just built it into the value. They said new low value of whatever, right? So the coupons were already applied to the shelf or to the units on the shelf, right? So no coupons needed. Actually, more convenient for the consumer, right? Well, people got pissed because they stopped getting coupons that really weren't being used all that well anyways in the first place. And people got really mad because they were like, "Oh, we're not saving money anymore. You're not offering us to save any more money." But yet it was the same price as the coupon value was, right? So that demonstrates what Sean's saying right here is that once you give somebody something and then you take it away, you will see a revolt against that. So be cognizant of what you do and at the very least communicate on your end why you're taking it away, or if you need to, right?
Yeah, be apologetic.
Platform dies, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or just something catastrophic happens, or like you said, get signed to a label and you can't do that anymore. You have to be very clear on why you can't do that anymore. Just don't take it, right?
Yeah. And like another example of this is like, let's say for whatever reason the venue says, "Oh yeah, I can fit 500 people." So you sell 500 tickets, but they can really only fit 400.
Yeah.
Like, oh crap, now 100 people can't get in.
Yep.
That's using scarcity the wrong way, because now those 100 people are going to get pissed because they had a ticket. They were guaranteed to get in.
Yep.
They paid for it. They were so excited for it. Now they can't. So if that shit happens, be incredibly apologetic.
Yeah. Refund their money.
Yes.
Because
if
you
they
will
get
get
refunded,
sued.
they might get sad.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. Don't get.
Yeah. Don't get sued.
The same thing can happen like with merch. If they order something in their size and it looks like it's in stock, then and all of a sudden it's gone, they don't get it or whatnot. I mean, mistakes happen. A lot of times people are more understanding than not, but still when they pay for it, when they're promised it and all of a sudden it's gone, it can be really frustrating, especially if it's a really limited item. Like, 100 people sell it and they sell it, and for however it works out, they're the 100th person, but like it clicks through at like 102 and like you're sold out, and it can. So just be careful with that. With merchandise, it's always good practice to have a couple extra in the back that you don't plan on selling. Because here's the thing: let's say if you have 100 shirts, and you send them to 100 people, probably more than 10%, but at least 10% is going to get lost in the mail.
Yeah.
So you really want to order 110
or there will be
shirts.
an issue, right?
Yes, or 110 shirts so you can send them back out if people don't get them or whatnot. But that also protects you if you do oversell a little bit. You've got a little bit of a backlog that you can then dip into. And then, as you mentioned earlier, sometimes these places that sell a bunch of limited stuff, at the end of the year, they'll have like, hey, for $20, you get a blind mystery box.
Yeah.
And we just sell all of our leftover limited merch.
Yep.
It's your second chance at getting it.
Yep.
So you can still offload it once you have it, but just saying it's smart to carry a little bit more than you publicize.
Agreed. 100%. 100%. Great tip.
Yep.
Great tip.
We're done. I'm going to keep that. I better keep that whole pause in editing.
You should.
I hope I do.
You should.
It's like,
Yeah. One last way, I guess, to defend yourself is just don't get caught up in the competition.
Yeah.
There can be some slimy things done to encourage competition and just be cognizant and don't get too emotional, I guess. Yeah. Don't get too attached to something that you want, right? Grass isn't always green on the other side, but sometimes the grass is greener on the other side. Sometimes like we said, there's two sides to the same coin. So
sometimes they spray paint the grass green.
Sometimes, especially if you live in a post-apocalyptic universe.
Where are you going with this?
I don't know.
I thought you were going to say something like AstroTurf.
I was thinking like Fallout, you know?
Yeah.
Where they, I don't know.
Anyways, join in next week as we switch to a gaming podcast and we talk all about Fallout. No,
we'll talk about it. I'm going to bring it out next week.
We'll definitely talk about it off camera for sure. Anyways, with that being said,
I don't know if I want to talk about it off camera.
Fair enough.
I'm sorry.
I'm born to talk about
I was just being difficult.
I'm
just being difficult.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I don't even know if I want to throw it to you. I don't even know if like. I mean, if you're difficult to talk to, maybe people don't want to reach out to you and they don't want to know how to find you.
I'm only difficult to you.
Okay, that makes sense. Anyways, so for the people who you won't be difficult with, how can they find you and what can you offer them?
Well,
how scarce is your time?
Well, I'm not difficult. I want to say that first and foremost, only to Sean, because I can be.
Brandon's one of the easiest people to work with.
Well, thanks, Sean. You too.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's great. You can find
That's great. Good for you.
You can find more info about the studio and my services at studio222recording.com, or you can find me on all social media platforms at studio222recording or _ Brandon McLeod. Either one. That one's more my personal one, but I don't care if you reach out to me. I usually check that one more often anyways.
That's fair.
Bad Brandon.
He's friendly. He'll respond.
Yeah. So I'll try to respond and say hey. So if you are interested in anything like that, please hit me up. Sean, where can we find more info about you?
Yeah. If you're an artist that creates acoustic, rock, or folk music and you need some mixing and mastering done, reach out to me at swsrecordings.com. I also offer one-on-one artist development coaching there as well. So if you want to dive deeper into anything that we talk about here on the podcast, or just kind of get your own personal plan created for you on like a release schedule, getting like organizing what your goals are, just the whole gambit of planning out a successful kickstart to your career, give me a message on there. You can fill out the question form on my website. On top of that, if you want to learn more about this podcast, support us more, please share it to other artists that you think could benefit from learning these kinds of tips and tricks. If you have any sort of topics you want us to cover in the future, you can reach out to us at podcast@musicmakerscookbook.com. We're Music Makers Cookbook at every single social platform out there. So if it exists, you can probably find us. You can listen to us on any podcast platform out there. Thank you for following, liking, subscribing. It really, really helps us.
Absolutely.
The first 100 people to like us, we'll get a thank you.
Wow. A personal thank you.
Yeah, that's Scarcity. Only the first 100 though. Anyways, yeah, thank you for watching and supporting this. And with that being said,
Bon appetit.